بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى.
Sayyid Ali, I've been thinking about morality. When someone cheats on a test, bullies others, or mistreats people such as our teachers or authorities, I instinctively feel it's wrong and think, that's not right. But why do we all seem to feel that feeling?
Great question, Sajjad. Humans seem to have an innate sense of right and wrong. Consider fairness. When someone cuts in line or a teacher grades unfairly, don't we immediately feel it's unjust?
Definitely. Even young kids complain if something seems unfair.
Exactly. This widespread moral sense makes us wonder, where does it originate? We all naturally agree that certain actions like bullying or cheating are objectively wrong, not merely personal preferences. We expect others to recognize these values too. That indicates there's a universal standard beyond ourselves.
Couldn't morals arise from society's social development towards civilization?
Good thinking. Society teaches us morals and may influence our instincts. However, it doesn't fully explain the universal nature of core moral values. Honesty, courage, and kindness are admired everywhere, while cruelty or betrayal are universally condemned. If morals were merely cultural, they'd vary significantly between different societies. You see, when someone, or some leader, or country, or political system becomes corrupt and starts killing innocent children and women, some people in power do nothing to stop it. The globally powerless communities would condemn and grieve at such atrocities and wait for someone or some time or some just system to save mankind from such injustice and cruelty.
Therefore, society does not create universal values. For instance, if a whole school believes that bullying is acceptable, this does not make bullying right. You and I would still consider bullying to be wrong. This indicates that right is not simply whatever the group or society decides.
Very well said.
Right, I can relate to what happened to Imam Hussein. Peace be upon him, even though many powerless communities mourned and felt deep passion for the immense suffering he and his beloved family members, children and women endured due to injustice, cruelty, and evil inflicted upon them, peace be upon him. Some of those who felt their pain even rose against the evil system, but many of them were ultimately killed and massacred.
Precisely. Even those who did not rise against evil experienced twice the pain, once for Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, and his beloved ones, and again for their inability to do anything.
One of the things that astonishes me is that even though Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, and his companions, or even movements like the French Revolution against evil and injustice, went against their self-interest, it cost them significant sacrifices of life, wealth, and dignity. Yet, they never gave up, and persisted in rising against evil and injustice, sacrificing the most precious things in their lives.
That's exactly my next point. Moral actions often conflict with self-interest or survival instincts. For instance, risking one's life to save strangers does not help personal survival, yet we see it as profoundly noble. Our moral sense frequently urges us to protect the weak or to sacrifice for others, which is not self-serving. It's as if an inner voice tells us that some things are categorically right or wrong, regardless of our personal wishes. This suggests that morality is not solely about survival, but reflects something deeper and more meaningful. Suppose the sacrifice of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, had been limited to Islam and Shiaism. Why do many non-Shias and non-Muslims, such as numerous Christians, Jews, and Hindus, including the notable Gandhi, show a passion for his sacrifice and defend social justice?
Because Imam Hussein's peace be upon him sacrifice was to preserve the commonly inherited shared values among mankind, and it is truly something beyond human invention, correct?
Exactly. If objective morals like fairness and compassion truly exist, they must have a source beyond personal or cultural opinions. This implies a higher moral authority, God.
You mean, without God, morals wouldn't be genuinely objective?
Yes, without God, morals become merely opinions. Without a higher standard, you could not convincingly argue that bullying is truly wrong. It would just be a matter of personal preference or majority opinion. However, we inherently believe some actions are objectively wrong, indicating a deeper source for morality.
So, does morality imply a moral lawgiver?
Exactly. To make it simple, the argument goes like this. If God doesn't exist, then objective morals don't exist. But since objective morals clearly do exist, because we universally believe certain actions are genuinely wrong, then a moral lawgiver, God, must exist.
That makes sense. But what if someone argues that morality is simply randomly part of the universe?
Good point. If morals were random, they would lack meaning, much like after rolling dice, where the numbers appear aimlessly and lack consistency when repeated. The consistency of universal values like justice and kindness across generations implies intention and purpose, suggesting a mind or intelligence behind them. A random universe wouldn't produce morally meaningful laws consistently.
True. Consistent universal moral values require intelligent intention behind them, and absolute morality demands something greater than humans or biology.
Exactly. Genuine notions of right and wrong point to a higher moral authority. God, as the ultimate lawgiver, instills that deep sense of justice, fairness, and kindness.
Now I understand. Without God, morals are just opinions. With God, they have a firm foundation and consistency.
Precisely. Even those who do not believe in God claim to have an embedded moral compass inside them, such as jealousy against their opposite gender partner when someone tries to flirt with their partner. However, they fail to explain the source of it and how it got embedded, or say who embedded it inside them.
What about those atheists who argue that moral values evolved in mankind through repeated bitter experiences in history and society?
Yes, but those views do not explain what originally motivated people across history and cultures to oppose evil and injustice. While socially developed values may change from one generation or culture to another, even within the same time period, we still find universal moral instincts that remain constant. For example, people everywhere recognize the wrongness of cruelty or the killing of innocent children. This raises an important question. Where do these universal moral standards come from? If there is no higher standard beyond personal or cultural opinion, then we lose any firm basis for calling something truly right or wrong.
So great. Universal moral values are not random. They clearly point to something greater. So again, is there anything that echoes this logical concept from our Shia Islamic texts? Sorry to ask, Sayyidina, but you taught us to relate logic to religion because our faith does not oppose logical principles.
You don't need to apologize, Sajjad. Reflect on these verses in which Allah the Exalted emphasizes that He has embedded the moral compass in the soul of mankind by programming it to distinguish good from evil. Surah Ash-Shams 91:10. By the soul and Him who fashioned it and inspired it with discernment between its virtues and vices. One who purifies it is felicitous, and one who betrays it fails. In Surah Al-Balad 90:10, we showed him the two ways of goodness and evil. In Surah Al-Insan 76:3, indeed we showed him both ways, whether to be grateful or ungrateful. Surah Al-Rum teaches that Allah the Exalted created every human being with an inner, unchanging moral and intellectual compass, fitra. This innate guidance remains constant across all people and generations, even if some ignore or drift away from it. The verse confirms that the message of Islam is based on this intellectual foundation. So commit yourself to this moderate religion. It aligns with the embedded guidance of Allah, who created mankind with it. There is no alteration of the embedded values in Allah's creation. This is the true religion, but most people do not realize it.
Thank you, Sayyid Ali. Since we are the people of Al-Thaqalain, the two heavy sources of guidance left by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, may I request a hadith reflecting this logical concept?
Certainly. Consider an example from the first sermon of Imam Ali, peace be upon him, in Nahj al-Balagha, where he indicates that after Allah the Exalted made a covenant of faith with human spirits, He created them physically with an embedded agreement of logical faith and universal values known as fitra. Afterwards, He did not leave them in darkness in this world. He continued sending prophets to remind us of the logical faith in Allah the Exalted and the universal values ingrained deep within us. This fitra is an excellent gift from Allah the Exalted and His blessing to us, which many forget or overlook after entering this world. The role of the messengers, peace be upon them, and the prophets, peace be upon them, is to affirm what resides within us, not to contradict it. and to remind us of the logical faith and universal values as proof against those who oppose them, so that no one can claim, "I didn't know." He further affirms that the prophets, peace be upon them, provoke the hidden faith and universal values buried in the fitra within our intellect. So Allah sent his messengers to them, and his prophets one after another to them, and their role was to ask them to fulfill the pledge of his faith he embedded in them, fitra, remind them of the blessings of faith they had forgotten, propagate arguments against their disbelief, and to reveal for them the fitra hidden within their natural minds.
Wow, that is so deep. This conversation has made morality more precise and more meaningful for me.
You're welcome, Sajjad. Reflect on these essential questions. They guide us toward greater understanding and purpose.
وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين وسلم تسليما كثيرا وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل